my friends, foreign English speakers, and also everyone else who's interested in improving your spoken English. If this is the first time you see me, I'm Robbie from EnglishHarmony.com, and this is yet another video episode where I'm discussing various English fluency related issues and English improving techniques and methods. Today, we're going to look at a very important aspect of speaking English, namely, making mistakes. I think that the majority of foreign English speakers have to admit that fear of making mistakes when speaking English is one of the main factors inhibiting our spoken English fluency. We all can definitely remember situations when we made a mistake when speaking or attempting to speak, and that has made us feel insecure, embarrassed, and ashamed of our level of spoken English. The more similar situations we encounter, the more conscious we become, and fear of making mistakes constantly feeds on itself. So, what initially shows up as only moments of slight embarrassment can grow into a proper speech anxiety, and you can start avoiding contacting other English-speaking people to avoid those embarrassing situations. And this is where it gets serious. While being a bit confused and making an odd mistake here and there is absolutely normal, those foreign English speakers who are constantly worried about making mistakes have their English improvement seriously impeded. In other words, they find it hard to enjoy themselves when speaking English. So where does this fear of making mistakes come from, and why it's so prevalent among foreign English speakers? I think that there are a couple of reasons for that, and the biggest of them goes back to your school days, when you studied English sitting behind a school desk. Just think about this. At school you are aiming to achieve good grades, so every mistake you make downgrades your assessment in your English teacher's eyes. While generally students are kind of encouraged to speak and express themselves, at the same time your knowledge is constantly assessed and checked against the existing standards. Such system works pretty well in exact subjects, where you are literally required to memorize formulas and be able to perform certain calculations, whereby making a mistake would result in a wrong answer. English speaking is a completely different matter altogether. I would rather put English in the same subject category with arts and music, because when you learn a language, it's more about being able to improvise and express yourself in a unique way, rather than cram something into your brain and then reproduce the very exact knowledge. In other words, I believe that the existing English teaching system at school is responsible for many foreign English speakers being way too conscious of making mistakes. They feel as if they're still sitting behind a desk in an English class, and if they say something that isn't 100% correct, they'll get a bad grade. Another reason for many foreign English speakers being too worried about making mistakes when speaking is their type of personality. If you aren't very confident, and you generally tend to be a bit on the shy side, you can find it very intimidating when speaking with an English speaker and making mistakes. It's basically down to feeling like a lesser person, and none of us like feeling that way, do we? So, if you're one of those folks who are anxious about making mistakes, here's what I'll tell you. You have to try changing your mindset regarding how you perceive mistakes made during English speech. A slip of a tongue when speaking isn't the same as making permanent mistake when performing some practical task. If you're a shop assistant and you make a mistake when giving a change to a customer, that's a real mistake. If you make a small mistake when thanking your customer for making a purchase, it's an entirely different matter. You can always go back and correct yourself, so you have to start looking at mistakes made during English speech in a similar way you would regard mistakes during a musical performance, for example. Let's say you're singing, despite not being a professional artist, and it doesn't really matter that much if you're off tune on a couple of notes, or if your voice is a bit shaky because you're nervous on stage. Once you're hitting the main notes right, and you can carry yourself with a head held high, you're 100% fine, and people will still be getting the song's message. They'll feel your heart and soul through the song. And the same goes with speaking English. You're not a professional English speaking artist, which means that you're not a native English speaker. But similar what I just said about singing performance, as far as you're smiling and being friendly, and the small mistakes you make aren't as big as to create a real communication barrier, you're fine. You see, the thing is that 9 out of 10 native English speakers, and also other English speaking people in general, will see much more in your English speech than just words. It's about how you look at people. It's about your emotions when you speak, your facial expressions, your gestures, and so on. And it's not a secret that the biggest part of the message you get across to the other person consists of all those components that I just said, not only words. Of course, as I said previously, if your mistakes create a real communication barrier, it does become an issue indeed, so you need to make 100% sure you're getting the basics right. There's no doubt about that. But the main point of today's lesson is that if you constantly fear making mistakes when speaking English with people, you will avoid real communication, and therefore you will find it very hard to improve your communication skills. After all, there's much more to speaking English than just being able to speak. It's actually more about facing other people, especially people you speak with for the first time, or important people, and the related stress you're experiencing, and how it affects your verbal performance, and all those aspects together. You may even find yourself in a strange situation when you can speak with much fewer mistakes with certain people, or when you practice your spoken English with yourself. When you go out there and face real-life communication, however, you might make a whole lot more mistakes, because during real communication you get stressed out a bit, or you face non-standard questions, so you're required to improvise when speaking. And it all adds up, creating a brand new dimension of English speaking. So basically, if you perceive mistakes during English speech as something terrifying, as something that you make and it stays there and you can't correct, or as something that will definitely make others laugh about you and you'll end up being humiliated, then you definitely have to change the way you see mistakes. You have to start seeing them as an integral part of being a foreign English speaker. You simply have to tell yourself, making mistakes is normal. Whenever you feel onset of fear and anxiety, if there's a prospect of speaking English with someone. But don't think I'm condoning speaking bad, broken English without trying to improve it. That's not at all what I'm saying. You definitely need to work on your spoken English skills to make sure you get English grammar right, and also that you use proper words and phrases and so on. This video episode's point was simply to make you understand that you have to ignore the fear of making mistakes when you speak English. Just ignore it. Every time you feel onset of fear when there's a prospect of a conversation with someone in English, don't avoid the conversation. Simply jump into it, as if you're jumping in a swimming pool from a jumping board. Alright, that was it for today's episode, and I really hope that you'll heed to my advice and take action when encountering fear of making mistakes next time. Thanks for watching this video, and don't forget to post comments here on YouTube or on my blog at englishharmony.com.